Well, Jim, when you factor in that it was one of the biggest days of the year for AEW Grand Slam in Queens at Arthur Ashe Tennis Stadium, it's the reason why we actually for once watched Rampage, and of course, as you mentioned earlier, it was double the size, double the power, a 2-hour Rampage. How much of it did you watch, and did you start at the beginning?
I did start at the beginning, and I will never forgive you for this, because I had to see the first match because of the injuries involved, because the clip went out of Julia Hart taking that death-defying bump where she actually did defy death, because 1 inch farther back and she would have been dead. But apparently that was only the second or third injury in that match, depending on how you define injuries. It was Buddy and Brody, formerly the House of Black, now with no black, but with Julia Hart, against Sting and Darby Allin. And okay, yes, Sting wrestling on Rampage is bound to a big show, big crowd, bound to get somebody interested. I can understand that. But good God, I felt so bad for him. But then again, I'm thinking, well, I don't know whether I feel bad for him, because Sting is out there. He's 62 years old, and he's obviously being paid a large amount of money. One would imagine, knowing Tony Khan and with Sting's status in the wrestling community over the last however many years, it's 7 figures to get him to do this, and he's trying to earn the money. But instead of trying to maybe help teach the rest of these fucking lunatics anything about what they ought to be doing, he's trying to do what they're doing. And at one point, it looked like somebody needed to bring him an oxygen tank. And that's before he got his head busted open. Because by the end of this thing, he was bleeding. Darby Allin got 5 staples in the top of his head. And then Julia Hart was nearly killed. And, I mean, it's every indie nightmare match that you could ever think of. They did one that they finally got the House of Black entrance to look good. There comes Julia, and the lighting looked right, and then the 2 big guys. Okay, this looks kind of spooky. And then there is immediately Darby Allin and Sting behind them in their entrance, and they start the match on the ramp during the entrance. And get a 4-way fight on the floor and in the ring. And within 2 minutes, they're setting up the first table. And then, again, it was every nonsense indie match that you'd ever want to see, with guys just going out and doing stupid shit for no reason, but it's the biggest budget, highest payroll indie match in recorded history. And just as I'd written that, Sting goes to the top rope and gets pushed off the top rope through a table to the floor and hit his head on the second table that was sitting next to it on the way down. So that's a guess where he was bleeding from. I don't know. And then Julia Hart brings handcuffs into the ring, and it takes all of the heels forever to handcuff Sting's hands behind his back, which, by the way, is in front of the referee, because did I mention this is no disqualification? Lazy booking. And they go to the break with nothing happening except the heels are trying to handcuff Sting's hands behind his back. And none of them ever served on the police force because they couldn't do it. But when they come back from the break, now they're on the stage, back in the entranceway, 2-on-1 with Darby. And within the next 60 or 90 seconds, Darby comes off the lighting platform and does a coffin drop onto a heel. And then they start doing spots on the stage, and then old fat tattooed up Brody guy gets a sleeper on Darby Allin, and they both fall off the stage through a table, which is where Darby Allin got the 5 staples in his head, apparently. Every second this lasted seemed like hours, because now they're at the point in every garbage indie match where they're not having a match and there's not even actually action going on. They're just setting up and moving around objects and furniture. And then Buddy comes back to the ring with a baseball bat where Sting is handcuffed. And Buddy sets up a chair in the ring and grabs Sting and sets him down in it. And since Sting is handcuffed with his hands behind his back, he just sits in the chair without getting up and moving, because apparently now his ass is glued to the chair also. And he's sitting there daring the guy to hit him with the bat. I don't know, instead of standing up and kicking the guy with his free legs, he just, oh, hit me with a bat, I dare you. And Buddy draws back in a very grandiose and dramatic fashion so the lights can go out. And when the lights come back on, here comes the Great Muta. We know it's Muta because he's already got an entrance video where it says his name, the Great Muta. And Sting is still sitting in the chair, not moving, as Buddy turns around to look at Muta, who is in quicksand, creeping to the ring. So Muta's in quicksand, Buddy's a statue, and Sting is glued to the chair. And Buddy, when faced with Muta getting in the ring to face him, drops the bat. And then steps sideways so Muta can stare at Sting. And then more nothing happens. And then Muta turns to Buddy, who now apparently wishes that he still had the bat that he just put down. And he tries to kick Muta, and Muta gives him a leg screw, leg lace, whatever they call it these days. And then hits him with the mist, and he backs up into Julia and wipes Julia off the apron of the ring, and she misses but attempts to go through the third table in this match.
Which was clearly pre-cut.
Well, but I don't know that, because I don't know what... You don't pre-cut tables. That's what I don't know.
You saw her. She barely touched the thing. It broke in half.
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out, because she barely touched it, but it didn't break in half. Her ass, shaped like her ass that hit the table, broke out. I've never seen a table break like that before. But you don't pre-cut the tables. But here's something else I noticed. I don't think they're taking that fucking plastic or metal rim off of them either. Which, the thing is, you don't pre-cut a table, because if you land in the middle of the table, that your weight landing in the middle of an 8-foot table is what breaks the table, and the table breaking without being cut is also what absorbs some, or is supposed to absorb some, of the fall, so you don't just go plummet straight through it to the floor. It breaks the fall a little bit. But in this case, she missed the table, falling on it in the middle, so it didn't break in half to break her fall, but a big chunk of it came out where her ass hit and the back of her head hit the floor. So I don't know how the fuck that happened. But also there's a metal ring around a lot of these modern tables, and if you don't take that off before you land on the table, when the table breaks, the rim just flops up everywhere and can cut you open or do who knows what. Nevertheless, this all in... Oh, and then Sting broke the handcuffs and hit the Scorpion Death Drop on fucking Buddy. Thanks for coming, Buddy. 1, 2, 3. This could have been the worst match ever on AEW television. And imagine what kind of territory that takes in. But this was just... It's like, oh my God, we've got a big crowd, so we have to make our match as rotten and phony looking and stupid as possible and do everything that everybody else does in every other fucking match except Sting. Sting's in it. Otherwise, it looked like every other fucking match that every other fucking indie guy has. I would have fined everybody involved, but I'm sure Tony probably set half this thing up. What were your thoughts?
I mean, the match was a disaster. It's not my style of wrestling if everything worked and people didn't get hurt. But at one point, they just went from like one camera cut to another, and there's Darby, he's down and out. Here's another person, he's down and out. And then, of course, the lights go out. What are you going to do? I'm going to stop doing anything I was going to do and stand here and freeze for the Great Muta to come out and show you how to do the mist, by the way.
Yeah, he did nail the mist.
Yeah. He showed him how to do the mist, and then Julia Hart missed the table. How about that? The Julia Hart thing is so problematic because when I first saw it, you felt bad for her. You knew she got at least her bell rung there, just you had to have.
Yeah.
But when you talked about it, I never thought about it the way I do now until you laid it out about how close she was to really, if the back of her head, just a few inches up, she's done.
Yeah.
More than likely. And that's where it becomes scary, and that's where something has to change, but nothing will change until someone gets seriously hurt, and then it'll eventually change back to what it was when people get tired.
What's serious? How many more surgeries do they need? Has Kyle O'Reilly had his neck fused, is what we're hearing? Nobody will admit it.
You know, it shouldn't be a rite of passage to go through a table. I guess that's the issue.
Well, if you're going to... You know what? Again, if you do it right, I would rather get slammed off the top rope through a table by somebody who knows what the fuck they're doing to turn me right than I would to take any of these fucking goofy moves from any of these fucking green bastards where I get dropped on my head and my neck broken. Because at least I'd be in control of what I've just mentioned. But the point is, why go through a table now? There was 3 in this match. It's on every show. It's lazy at this point. It makes a loud noise and something breaks so people will react to it. And then they won't remember it 15 minutes later. But what about, you might have a table leg through your fucking spleen, you fucking moron. Again, there's an element of risk in everything, but you get people who know what the fuck they're doing and they pick their spots to do it, and it's acceptable in some fashion. But again, with Julia Hart, and I'm not exaggerating, and anybody that thinks I am, well, you're a fucking moron. If she went back 2 inches farther, it would have snapped her fucking neck and she'd have been dead before she hit the floor. Just go back and watch it. Tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. And if you do, after seeing that, you still think I don't know what I'm talking about, did I mention, fuck you? So it's not a rite of passage. It's this poor teenage girl that got in the wrestling business, I guess because she wanted to be on TV, and there's nobody there professional enough to fucking take care of her and teach her how this shit's supposed to be done. Or set an example by not doing stupid shit yourself. So anyway, speaking of stupid shit, are we moving on to the next match?
Yes, I don't even remember what it was, but let's move on to it.
I'll tell you what it was. It was Daddy Mac and Cool Hand Luke against Hook and Action Bronson. And Action Bronson, I thought you told me Brian was a rapper. Did you not tell me he was a rapper?
He is indeed a rapper. Now, sometimes that doesn't necessarily translate well to live performance, especially when walking to a ring. But in the studio, he spits fire.
It sounded like he'd been trying to breathe fire and burned his vocal cords up. Do people buy his records? This sounded like a man with Tourette's syndrome having a stroke on the way to the ring. He's a fat guy with tattoos. Yes, he looks like an indie wrestler. But my God, Caster raps better. I couldn't even understand what this fucking jowl-faced moron was saying.
Boy, you hate him. You just hate this guy.
But look at this fucking match. You've got 2 fucking Jericho stooges that are presented as comedy, again, mid-card fucking stooge guys, against Hook, who has all kinds of potential. And this guy, again, he's wearing a fucking dirty T-shirt and a pair of jeans that shows his pale, pasty white tattooed fucking legs and tennis shoes. And he looks like a fat fucking mechanic. And the level of unprofessionalism by any of these people on this fucking program. I love Hook's style. All the throws and the suplexes, and he looks like an athlete. He needs some size. He'll get older and bigger. But putting him in with green heels and an amateur partner. And again, as a matter of fact, here's what I wrote. Action Bronson looks and dresses like a victim of a drug deal gone wrong that was just fished out of the East River. A fat guy that does shoulder tackles, so let's let him wrestle. Did he add one viewer? Does anybody outside New York know who this motherfucker is? And do any of those people care to watch him wrestle?
People outside of New York know him. In fact, after we talked about him on the show, a lot of people pointed out he's one of the biggest stars on Vice TV. So there's that.
I'm one of the biggest stars on Vice TV, and I can outwork Action Bronson.
Is that your problem? Is it a competitive thing with you and Action Bronson? No. Who's going to take over Vice TV?
No, it's goddamn, I'm sick of seeing 6 fucking rappers on the same program, and none of them know what the fuck they're doing either. But they allow them, they indulge them. If the guy wanted to rap Hook to the ring, okay, I wouldn't like the music, but fine. But now, let's make him a wrestler. Because he's some kind of celebrity. So let's just show everybody that anybody can do this shit. So anyway, the faces went over with the double choke out. So now this guy, this obviously middle-aged, fat, out-of-shape fucking rapper just choked out a trained, competitive professional wrestler in the first match the rappers ever fucking had. That makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
Hey, look, not everyone can be Trina.
Oh, we'll get to Trina. Don't rush me on Trina.
He didn't take any bumps, but, you know, for a first performance, it was up there with Lawrence Taylor and
what?
Richard Belzer.
Well, okay, I'll give you that. I mean, can you talk me into anything that I should have liked about this?
No, I don't think I could talk you into it, no.
Can you present a case for anything I should have liked about this?
A lot of things happen in AEW that just kind of happen and then go away. So I'm sure this is what it was, and now it is done.
All righty then. So the next match, easy to figure out. There's every reason in the world why this should be taking place. Wardlow and Samoa Joe as a tag team faced Tony Nese and Josh Woods. And Tony Nese was the premier athlete or the great free agent or whatever, and he's never won a match on television. And Josh Woods was in Ring of Honor, and I don't know that we've ever seen him on television. And Wardlow and Samoa Joe have this long-running relationship. They did some fucking foolish shit on one of their B shows, and now they just want to have this tag team match. And Wardlow and Samoa Joe, both guys that should have the attention on themselves as the kick-ass, the badass. Especially, even though I like Samoa Joe, Wardlow comes first right now because he at least was over with the people, and they did have him hot. But now they're partners, and they beat these job guys up. But again, the baby faces go to the ring, jump start on the heels, a 4-way, 2 on the floor, 2 in the ring, sloppy work. The heels aren't over. The face team makes no sense. It was a 4-way through the whole fucking match, even though nobody said it was no DQ or a tornado match. Just a 4-way. And then Joe beat Tony Nese, and then Sterling came in and Wardlow powerbombed him a few times. And then it's like none of these guys were ever taught how to fucking wrestle. They just send them out to do their goddamn moves and finish the match when you're done with it. Samoa Joe's better than this. Wardlow should be. Why could this not have been a tag team match where they just fucking beat the job guys but didn't do a goddamn chaos 4-way through the whole thing like that call was called for in any way, shape, or form?
I couldn't tell you too much. This was my bathroom break match, and I think that says a lot. The fact that Wardlow is now in the bathroom break match. What I usually say for the women's match on the show for the first bathroom break or kitchen break, it was the Wardlow match. That's how much they've cooled him off. He's just now appearing in random tag matches and six-man matches with FTR. He has no one he's programmed with. Every now and then he'll kill a few people, and then he'll be back in a tag match or a six-man match. It seems like, at least.
Were FTR in Arthur Ashe Stadium?
There was a promo.
Yes, they were told off by the Gun Boys and had no response but to agree with the criticism that they were confronted with.
So the last time on the show, we talked about what's going on with FTR. We talked about them being cooled off and momentum being cooled off, how they get the biggest pop and then they're off TV, or they'll get the biggest pop and then all of a sudden a few weeks later, Dax will have a singles match, which he never wins. And here's another example. Since that time, they weren't even on the fucking stadium show in New York. Where were they? Why weren't they there?
Well, they weren't there so that by the time that the Cucamonga kids get unsuspended from the principal and can get out of study hall and go back to regular class, the fans will have forgotten that they thought that FTR was a much better tag team than the Hardy Boys. That's the goal there. But we'll see what happens.
I wonder if the Bucks are going to come out of this talking to people differently, talking about people differently, behaving differently, being less douchey to people who aren't in their little clique. It'll be interesting to see how they react to this, if this is any kind of eye-opening event. Or eye-shutting. It was an eye-shutting event, but will it be an eye-opening event in the long run?
Well, maybe by the time they get unsuspended, Nick Jackson's eye will be opened up again. But no, I don't think they're going to learn a goddamn thing. I still think they think that they're the hot shots in the wrestling business and all the big stars are the ones that need to modify their behavior. So we'll see. The next match, Jungle Boy versus Felix. And I said, oh, hell no. 20 fucking minutes later, that thing was over. And, of course, Christian Cage comes out with his arm in a sling, and Jungle Boy's looking at him, and guess what happens? Dino Douche comes from the other side from behind the ring. Again! Remember we just talked about on the last program we did, that the only finish that exists now in the WWE is music plays, somebody comes down and distracts somebody, and they turn into the opponent's finish 1, 2, 3. They did that basically 3 times on the same program last week. This show is somebody comes down, and the person stands and looks at them, and somebody else attacks from behind in every fucking match. And Dino Douche gets on Jungle Boy and hits some kind of lazy move. And then Christian gets in and cuts a promo and knocks the fans and cuts a promo on the prone, feckless babyface who is laying there grimacing while Dino Douche has one foot lazily standing on his head so he can't escape. And then after the promo is finished, Dino takes his foot off the guy's head and gives him a choke slam. Could you come up with could Eddie Graham or Leo Garibaldi or Bill Watts, the greatest bookers in the history of wrestling, come up with a way to make a babyface look more like a piece of shit than to have somebody just stand on his fucking head while somebody else trash talks him and the guy can't do anything about it? I wrote at this point, I can't take much more of this program. Did I miss anything here?
No.
Good.
Who gives a shit about Jungle Boy anymore? How could you?
Maybe Baltimore just for the royalty checks, but... And then... Eddie Kingston versus Sammy Guevara with Ty Meloconti. And this was the match that they were supposed to have a few weeks ago before Eddie got suspended for trying to pie face Sammy when Sammy called him a fat piece of shit. So I wrote, as Kingston was headed to the ring, I wrote down, if they jumpstart this, I'm skipping it. And in here comes Sammy, and he gets the microphone, and he tells Kingston that he's sorry that Eddie is a big fat piece of shit. And then Eddie goes for Sammy's eyes, and they go to the floor and stay there. And I said, fuck it. See ya. They went to the first break without using the ring. And when they came back, I didn't, except to the finish. Eddie got the choke, and he won. And then he wouldn't let the choke go. And then Jerry Lynn comes in to try to plead with him. And then 7 security guys come in, making obviously fake and phony gestures and mannerisms like, oh my God, don't do that. And all 8 grown adult men stand there and fake plead with Kingston to let go instead of grabbing him or pulling him off or attempting to break the hold. And again, sometimes they have security and sometimes they don't. It never looks real because they get job guys that overact because they've been too used to watching modern wrestling and think that's the way that people conduct themselves. And again, I keep saying when they do the angle where they're killing somebody for 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, nobody's trying to stop this. So then the guy holds a fucking submission hold after a match for 10 extra seconds, and suddenly there are 7 security people in the ring, and nobody will put their hands on the fucking guy. There's no logic or continuity or consistency or any kind of sense to any of this. It's almost like the individual wrestlers in charge of their matches make up their own shit and their own rules. But we know that would be insane. So then the referee reverses the decision and makes Sammy the winner, which then lets Kingston let go of the deal, and he then effortlessly beats up all 7 security guys who take 1 bump each and roll away and never come back. All these things are actually what would happen if it was real security and a real situation going on, of course. My God, they couldn't have had Jerry Lynn come out and try to speak to him, and the announcers could have just, Jerry Lynn, one of the producers, he's friends with Eddie Kingston, and then 2 or 3 security guys come and try to pry him off, and Eddie drops the fucking hold to turn around and backfist one security guy and hit the other one, boom, and a big move on the other one, and then Jerry Lynn gets in front of him, and then more security comes, and he can't fucking fight any more of them, and Jerry's trying to calm it, or anything. But instead, it's just like they've seen some type of cartoon wrestling show before where all these things happen, and they just, oh, now it's time to beat up the 8 security guards. Okay. They think this is good. They think this is the way you do this shit. I'm insulted as a professional. Your thoughts before I go any further on what else insulted me?
Oh, I'm glad to hear there's more that insulted you on this show. You know, I like Eddie Kingston, but Eddie Kingston's like the classic Northeast babyface star. Does a great promo, you want to root for him, may not like the matches so much. There's a lot of that. Sammy, if Sammy was used better, especially with Ty Conti or Ty Mello, he could be like one of the best heels, but he's used so poorly. But as soon as he gets on the mic, you want to hit him.
Slappable face.
But again, you have to be used right. And those are my only thoughts on that match.
Yeah. Well, the next match was the long-awaited grudge match between Diamante, who used to be somehow affiliated with Santana and Ortiz, right?
No.
Didn't she? Or wasn't she in some type of...
She was in a tag team with Ivelisse, I believe.
I thought Diamante used to be with the Puerto Rican men's group. Maybe I'm thinking of someone else.
Maybe I'm just wrong.
And speaking of where's Santana and Ortiz?
Well, Santana was injured in that War Games match, or the Blood and Guts match.
My God, that's been months ago.
Ortiz, I don't think it was even that long ago, actually. Ortiz is still wrestling on these shows. I believe he was actually on the taping. I don't know if he was on, I guess he wasn't on Rampage. He was on the Grand Slam show. I heard he got a good pop because he's a hometown guy. But the other story is that apparently there's real life issues between the two of them, so they may not team together again.
Nobody likes anybody around there. Anyway, Diamante versus Jane Cargill. And Jane had her baddies, and Diamante had Trina. Remember, she came out with Trina on the show Wednesday and said, well, I got my bad bitch with me. You know, it used to be when you called women bitches, they got kind of upset. They didn't like it, but all these women refer to themselves as bitches. So is it okay now to call them bitches because they do it to themselves?
Nope, that's not how it works. They're allowed to call themselves bitches, but you're not allowed to call them bitches.
Why not?
Because that's not the way the rules work.
Who made the rules?
The people who you are addressing are the ones who make the rules about how you're going to address them without offending them.
So Trina was in the corner of Diamante, but she didn't rap. Now, she is a rapper, right?
She is. I don't know what she currently does. I mean, she was kind of, she wasn't ever a really big rapper, but her scene or her day was kind of a little while ago. But I don't know
Does
what
Trina have a last name?
Oh, she does in reality. I don't know what it is, but she was known in the world of hip-hop as just Trina.
As just Trina. Well, at least this rapper didn't rap on the way to the ring. She just wandered out with the same expression. It looked like that she was possibly doing this for a payoff because a member of her family's been kidnapped, and she was suddenly in need for money. She didn't enjoy anything. She looked like she was completely confused by the whole situation, as we all were. And then even this match, even in fast forward, this was awkward as fuck. And basically the finish was Diamante dives off the top, cross-bodying Jane Cargill on the floor. Jane's supposed to catch her, but Jane almost went backwards over the rail into the front row. The rail saved her and caught her, and then boom, and rolled her in the ring and hit her finish 1, 2, 3. And then you've got the baddies. But you've also, Trina gets in the ring to try to back Diamante up against Jane and the baddies. And then Trina snatches Diamante up by the hair and slaps her in the face with a fake slap. And of course, Jim Ross, who actually has been cited now, he was on this program. Jim Ross goes, oh, Trina. Because he was about ready to fucking get out of there, as we all were. And Trina shook hands with Jane with a look on her face that looked like she'd rather be at the dentist having a root canal procedure. And that was that. So apparently Diamante's a bad friend or bad judge of character. And Trina, she started out a baby face, but now she's a heel. My God, how will her career survive? And who really was the baddest bitch out of all of this? Because that's what they were fighting about, and I don't know that we ever determined.
I don't think we determined anything. You're right about the lack of enthusiasm from Trina from the moment she walked out. It's like she was sleepwalking to the ring. I don't know what the point of this is, because again, she, I believe, would be from the New York tri-state area. I can't imagine they're taking Trina on the road to any more Dynamites or anything, so this was just a one-time turn for no reason on Diamante, who we haven't seen on TV since she was teaming with Ivelisse, who they let go of a couple of years ago. This is the AEW women's division, folks. All elite women.
Who is the baddest bitch?
I think it's Jade. Jade's kind of running stuff there. She's kind of head of the bloodline. She's head of the table.
And I'm still convinced that now you're allowed to call ladies that word because they're all fighting over to see who's the biggest one and the baddest one.
Well, they certainly like to call themselves it, that's for sure.
All right, well, next was the Golden Ticket Battle Royal, and I'm not making this up. What in the world? Why is it that the most markiest of marks, the most amateur of bookers, the kids in their basement that sit down and write their own cards over and over again. And I was one of those when I was 14. They love battle royals. Nobody else does, but they do. This company has been battle royal to fucking death. And here again, another one of these inexplicable, it's a reason to get every outlaw goof in the company on camera. And again, they start the battle royal with the entrance of Hangnail Page, and then suddenly a half a dozen heels jump him from behind before he gets to the ring, and then here comes the Dork Order in to help, and Big Show suddenly has returned from the grave or the Federal Witness Protection Program or wherever he's been, and he's back on color, and they go to the break with a jump start of a battle royal. And when they come back from break, the full thing is going on. And once again, every indie-rific outlaw goof in the company is in this thing. And again, we go through almost 20 minutes of this horse shit before guess who wins? Hangnail Page. Tony rewards the empty-headed little bitch that started the chain of events that might be what puts his company out of business with winning the golden ticket. So they get a title shot at some goddamn title somewhere sometime. Like it's not. Is it hard now to get a shot at a title in AEW? Because if you have a match, chances are it's going to be a championship match because they got 18 titles.
If you're in AEW and you don't have a match for a title, something's wrong. Because they have so many championship matches, they just take in other companies' champions. Hey, come bring your champions onto our show. We'll take anyone, no matter what size, no matter who they are. I hate these battle royals. AEW makes you sick of battle royals and tournaments and golden casino, ladder fucking this and that. It's so overdone. Nice to see the Big Show or Paul White. Maybe he'll be the Big Show again soon. Who knows? But again, yeah. Adam Page. Why is Adam Page being rewarded for all the bullshit, for all the drama that he deliberately went out there and caused?
If Page was smart, and now examine the words I've just said, but if Page had been smart after he pulled that stunt on live TV and that promo with Punk and didn't get fired, he should have determined right then, I've used my get out of jail free card. I better keep my nose clean from this point on out. Because do you think the WWE is interested in him? What kind of, there's no personality there. He's illustrated he'll go into business for himself on live television at the behest of his little buddies rather than being serious about business. That Tony didn't fire him. He's got to realize this job is the best one he's probably ever going to have. And if not the best, the highest paying, and he probably ought to get his shit together, but I can't believe Tony still rewards him after all these headaches of the last few weeks that all directly went back to fucking Adam Page taken up for Colt fucking Cabana.
Maybe Adam Page is Tony's Shawn Michaels.
Good Lord, that would be the first time Adam Page has ever been compared to Shawn Michaels.
Unprofessional. New age version of unprofessionalism.
I thought you were talking about talent. Well, no, because even then, Adam Page would be an unprofessional. Adam Page is an amateur compared to Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels knew how to be unprofessional. Shawn Michaels could goddamn unprofessional with the best of them. This guy's just an idiot who said a bunch of unintelligible shit to a guy who didn't know it was coming and was confused about whether he ought to beat the fuck out of the guy or just talk around him. Anyway, the main event was next on this program, and the only reason that I stuck around to watch it because of who it was in it. And then we get to it, unsanctioned lights out match, no disqualification, no rules. As opposed to what other match on this program that had rules? Why don't they just say, hey, here's a special stipulation. in this match, you can get disqualified if you cheat.
We have a special match, a rules match here tonight. The referee knows how to count in this match.
And nobody ever gets disqualified in this fucking fakakta company to begin with. So anyway, Powerhouse Hobbs and Ricky Starks. And I'm thinking, okay, let's see. And then but they give the big entrance video for Starks and the big lighting effect. And I'm thinking, okay, but however, they've doomed these guys with the spot they put them in and the show they presented in front of them. A lights out match that the announcer said was so dangerous between these two and their ill feelings that it can't be sanctioned by the company because somebody could get hurt. And then here's two guys fighting barehanded. We can't sanction that. But that opening match with fucking 4 guys and a girl and tables and fighting all over the fucking building, well, that's fine. And or what about the Battle Royal with 20 people fucking doing whatever the fuck they wanted? Or the other 2 or 3 no disqualification matches that I've forgotten about. So now they've had, every match has had chaos and multiple tables and furniture and violence and handcuffs and whatever. And this lights out match is 2 guys. But within 2 minutes, Hobbs is pulling out a table and bringing it in and hitting Starks with it. And then a chair. And then a second chair. And while Starks is in the ring selling, Hobbs is on the floor looking under the ring and tossing junk in. And there's nothing actually happening. And then they go to the break. And when they came back from the break, I'd been distracted. I believe by Harley at that point, she needed to piss, and I forgot to pause the DVR. And when I came back, it was very close to the end of this thing. And at that point, I wasn't even interested enough to back it up and see what I missed. Because what the fuck could I have missed? I've seen people through furniture, people handcuffed, people, tried to fucking bleed to death. Near fucking fatalities. What are these two going to do? Maybe sometime they'll let Starks and Hobbs have a match, either a normal match or a stipulation match where the stipulation makes sense and everything that they could possibly do hasn't already been done beforehand in the program by 5 other people and 3 girls. And I like both these guys, but you can't watch them in a real match so you can judge their work or determine their progress without the furniture and the chairs and the bullshit. And anybody can do that. So after fighting on the stage and then getting back in the ring, and by the way, I think that was the 3rd match of the night that had fighting on the stage, Starks put him through a table and then hit him over the head with what I presume was a fake 2x4. Because if he didn't, then it would have killed him and his brains would have been splattered into jelly. And then he hit his wrestling finish on him, on Hobbs, did Starks. After he hit him over the head with a baseball bat swing with a 2x4, then he hit his wrestling finish. And I assume 1, 2, 3, but my DVR froze because they can't manage their time and they always do their pinfalls in the last 15 seconds of the show. So there was Hobbs and Starks. We couldn't even enjoy that.
You know what actually took me out of that match even more than the stipulations and the nature of the match was actually the fact that the previous match was Hobbs just destroying Starks in 7 minutes. What about that made me want to see them wrestle again?
Yeah, we still have not gotten an explanation for why that match was so blah or so short or the finish just came out of nowhere.
Unless they got killed for time, unless someone else ran really long and then... Because that was towards the end of the show, I think, on the pay-per-view. Maybe they got killed there, but it didn't make any sense.
Jesus Christ, it's not like anybody else tries to hit their time. Those shows last 5 fucking hours. I can't believe that would one of the, first times in history that people in AEW decided, well, maybe we're going too long and it was too short. I call bullshit on that. Well, maybe we'll never find out.
What do you think of the state of AEW right now? I mean, beyond, you've always had guys you don't like and everything else, but you've been able to look at the business and see what it is and see the people that fans may like that you don't. And we've been watching it for a while. So here we are now, 3 years into this thing, or over 3 years into this thing. What do you think of the state of AEW right now going into 2023?
Well, we pretty much have called all along that there was going to be problems eventually with the EVPs, and especially when it was time to move them aside because people had replaced them in the fans' hearts and minds, and or more fans, other fans have come along that don't care about their foolishness. Real fans of real mainstream stars. That's already happening. We knew that inexperience in the booking was going to be a big problem, and it's become obvious and blatant and much worse because at the start of the AEW, they didn't have any, you didn't see the evidence of guys getting over on their program and then having their legs cut off out from under them because it wasn't part of the plan, Smithers. But now we have. Wardlow gets over. They don't know what to do with him, keep him over. FTR gets over, even though they tried not to let him get over, so they bury him because of the Bucks. Punk drew them their $1 million gate, their $1 million or their million viewers and whatever, the million man. But the EVPs couldn't stand that because his presence was an exact rebuttal of everything that they think that wrestling is supposed to be in their screwed up fucking minds. The comedy clown show that they presented it as through their whole careers. That's what they were trying to do, but it didn't work. Not enough people want to see the comedy, silly clown fucking cheerleader wrestling with the girly men that look so fucking physically unintimidating. So, again, we saw this coming. I didn't know it was going to take this long. But you can't, they've done everything they can do to the human body. What angle are they going to do to hurt somebody or make somebody mad they want to come back and get even? It's just a car wreck every show. People being thrown through furniture and in the process really getting injured. And then it becomes, people are watching this to see who gets hurt and how. And so there's no leadership. The locker room is split apart into factions. There have already been actual fights. The yippiness and the smarminess of the fucking Bucks and Olivier, I don't think is going to be mitigated at all because they don't learn. They think they're right. They think they're stars. So they're going to be douchebags because douchebags are what douchebags are. So they're not going to be any help. Tony refuses to get help with booking. Most of their talent is injured or currently injured or suspended. And it's not like everybody couldn't see this coming because we've been talking about it. And it's not like we're the only ones. We just talk about it out loud more because everybody else wants a fucking job. So I don't know how any of this is a surprise. And I don't know how anybody can spin it as being anything positive.
Do you think AEW has lost a lot of the goodwill they had with AEW fans since the beginning?
Well, which ones? The fans of Twinkle Toes and the Hardley Boys, I'm sure, are somewhat upset that they can't see their artistry on TV on a regular basis. The fans that Punk brought back, they're pissed off. Even if he wasn't hurt, he'd still be suspended. So they're pissed, and now there's no Punk to get they did the $1.2 million for the couple of weeks after to see what was going to go on. Now they're seeing what's going to go on, and the numbers are starting to go back down again. So the Punk fans ain't happy. The fans of the Elite aren't happy. And just anybody just want to sit down and watch this program and enjoy it. You can't understand what's going on. You don't know what the fuck from one week to the other who you're going to see because people disappear, whether they get hurt or not. They just are unbooked. You can't follow anything. And it's the same thing. It's just chaos and a parody of wrestling now from the start of the show to the finish. Because everybody's doing the same shit, which is as much as they can possibly get away with in their matches to try to get over when now that's actually the least way you can get over now in AEW is to do something physical in the ring. Because everybody else is doing all this crazy shit and it just blends together. That's why MJF is the only standout.
And he wrestles the least.
Yeah, and he wrestles the least. And they would let him spit in their mouth if he wanted to.
Well, maybe not everyone. Maybe not everyone.
Well, it's him. It's him that he talks and that he fucking produces and that you can listen to him. And that somehow, since he got away from Jericho, he's avoided the bad booking that has gotten worse since then, that everybody else has fallen victim to. So, I don't know. I don't know what you do. I can't say what I would do if I was in that position because I never allowed myself to get in that position with this big of a fucking mess and this rotten of a fucking roster that half of them hate the other half, and he doesn't need half of them to begin with. But the half of them he thinks he needs are the half of them he ought to get rid of.
But when you look at Tony and the control he has over virtually everything with AEW, can you relate in a sense? I mean, if you look at Smoky Mountain Wrestling 3 years in, it was pretty impossible for you mentally at that point to give up anything to anyone because you knew you wouldn't fuck shit up, even if you wouldn't get any sleep and you'd eat like shit.
Yeah.
And you'd yell at people and beat up cars and all sorts of shit.
Yeah.
You knew you'd get your stuff done. It was hard for you to just hand off responsibility. You'd also been burned. Can you understand why Tony, and I'm not justifying it, but why Tony may not want to hand off more, let's say, with the booking?
No.
Why it may be tough for him mentally to do that?
No, I can't. Because he doesn't know what he's doing. And people have obviously been telling him that.
No one's been telling him that.
I have.
You tell him that. Everyone else tells him he's great. You're going to win Booker of the Year.
Here's the thing. If I had suddenly in the middle of Smoky Mountain Wrestling bought a car lot and decided to start selling cars, and I ran a shitty car lot and I couldn't sell any cars, you know what? I would have said, you know why? It's because I don't know how to sell cars and I've never owned a car lot and I'm the shits at it. So I'll hire me some car salesmen to sell my cars. If I started doing anything that I'd never done before, and I was obviously the shits at it, by just observably looking at what was going on, I would have somebody else do that. So the only thing that I've ever been good at really in my life is wrestling. So that's why I did all that shit. But in any other fucking endeavor whatsoever, from trying to put a fucking electric fan together that I bought off Amazon that took me an hour and a half about 3 weeks ago, and I never got it accomplished, and I ended up just giving it to the Monroes because I didn't want to look at it anymore. There's a lot of shit that I have no fucking idea how to do and can't do, and recognize that. And that's why I don't try to do it. Wrestling's not been one of those, but a lot of other things have. But Tony, with the Jaguars, the football, the soccer, whatever it is you're good at, wrestling booking ain't it. And that's why I cannot identify with somebody who insists on doing something they've never done before and they're not any good at, and it's observable that their fucking work sucks and makes no sense, and they still want to do it anyway. And a lot of people are going to say, oh, but look, they've drawn this money. And that. No, none of the booking has drawn any of this money with AEW. What's drawn the money with AEW, every single gate, every single pay-per-view, everything they've done is that they had the backing the money and the contacts to get on television and to sign the names that they signed and to fucking rent the buildings they've rented. And that comes down to Tony Khan being, if you want to give it to him, a great promoter for making all those things happen and also for having $1 billion. I'm not sure how much of his talent you can attribute that to, or maybe just lucky genetics. But he got the TV, he's rented the buildings, he signed the stars. And the people were so ready to see somebody fuck with Vince McMahon that they have supported this. I'm not denying any of those things. But the wrestling booking in AEW from the start has been absolutely abysmal, totally rotten, and contributed nothing to the business that they've done. They didn't sell one ticket in the last 3 years that they wouldn't have sold already, regardless of what the fucking booking was, except that if it had been good from the start, I believe they might have even be doing better right now. Because if the booking had been good from the start, people wouldn't be mad about how they've been used. People wouldn't be mad about being left off television. If the booking had been good at the start, the EVPs that have caused all this trouble wouldn't actually be EVPs, because Tony, if he was a good booker, would have also known not to give active wrestlers that kind of power. So they actually might be doing better right now, because the only thing that they haven't had, they've had the TV, they've had the buildings, they've had the pay-per-view, they've had the contacts, and they've got a talent roster with names, just some big names and some weird names and some, why the fuck would you hire this guy? But they've got a roster. The only thing they haven't had and never have had is any kind of logical, coherent booking to get new stars over and further things from one place to another. That's been haphazard, stupid, illogical, nonsensical, and chaotic at best. That's my summation of AEW.
All right. Well, if you had to take a guess on how many run-ins there would be on the next Dynamite, what would you guess?
Well, I'll tell you what, if I had to come up with a transition for you that would transition you from what we were talking about to one of our fine sponsors, I would say that I would guess that they're going to do it in every single match. And if Prize Picks would take betting on AEW wrestling, I could clean up because I'd be right. However, they will not do that because it'd be too easy. But folks, our friends at Prize Picks will let you make entries on all the player projections in their daily fantasy business, and you can win some money out of it. That's because Prize Picks offers projections on any sport that you watch: NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA, college football, men's college basketball, women's college basketball. Do they have women's college football? That would be interesting. What about women's grade school football? Also soccer,
No.
WNBA, esports, NASCAR, tennis, MMA, boxing, Euro basketball, cricket, and disc golf, as well as yo-yoing, which can sometimes be competitive. Folks, at Prize Picks, you can make entries within 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. You just go up to the window in the back, you flip the fucking lock, you cut a hole in the screen.
No.
You're in the house. Entries
No,
can be made in 60 seconds.
Entries are made digitally, online, very easily and safe, and you are safe in your home.
Yes, safe and fast withdrawals as well. You can withdraw. As a matter of fact, if you withdraw quickly enough, she won't get pregnant. And they're currently operational, folks, Prize Picks, that is, in over 30 states and Canada, which means that almost 20 states have still not found out what the scoop is and how to get in on this. But I'm telling you what, let's say, for example, your favorite baseball player, let's say Lou Gehrig. Let's say you think that he's going to hit 7 home runs in a game that night against the Toledo Mud Hens. See, this is basketball, Brian, or baseball, because I know you like the baseball. So if Lou Gehrig, you think, is going to hit 7 home runs against the Toledo Mud Hens, then you just make an entry saying that you think that's what's going to happen. And it's, as we mentioned, safe and fast. And if he does hit 7 home runs against the Toledo Mud Hens, then they send you money. Is that how that works?
I'm not exactly sure what you just said.
Well, in that case, folks, that's how it works. And right now, you can download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play the daily fantasy sports. And it's always good to have a fantasy every day, especially if it revolves around crotchless stuff. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 if you use the promo code JCE. That's how you know that you're in fine form there. If you use the promo code JCE, they will give you whatever kind of money that you put in. They'll match it. See? So just go crazy. Put all your money in there. Think about this. If you have $100,000 and you put $100,000 in and they match that, well, if you won, well, that would just be swell. But they won't do that because they only match up to $100 because they're not stupid at Prize Picks. But don't forget to enter the promo code JCE at sign up for an instant deposit match up to the aforementioned $100. And then if you're right and you beat these projections, then you will win up to 10 times your money. Is that correct, Brian Last?
Potentially.
Potentially. It's all subject to debate, happenstance, and chance. Randomness plays a part in this, but you could come out with some money.
That's right. You could come out with money. Of course, it all depends on how you do against the numbers with Prize Picks.
And the projections.
And the projections. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, you could come out brokering a broke dick dog, too, but things happen.
Things happen.
Things happen
with Prize Picks,
and you can never be fully sure. So embrace everyone and tell them you love them, and go to Prize Picks right now. You may not have a chance to do it tomorrow.
And what's that website again?
PrizePicks.com, or download the app. What would you think if you got hit by a truck and killed tomorrow, and you had not had the chance to go to Prize Picks? You would be miserable for the rest of your death.
Well, I don't want to comment on that, but Prize Picks.